right, we are coming up on 8 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get started tonight, shall we? Welcome, and thank you for joining me on our July 4th Independence Day special. Before we get started, I do need to make a minor adjustment. That feels better. Alright, so, as everyone may know, I try and remain non-political around here. And we're going to try and stick to that. I just want to make a reminder that despite everything that's been going on, the changes that are going through, what you may be seeing in the news, or the vitriol that's been spouted every which direction, it's important to remember that no one has a monopoly on patriotism and love for where you live. And if you're disappointed with your country, that's fine. You can be disappointed, you can be ashamed. But I like to think that it's important to try and remain hopeful, that despite everything that's going on, all the backsliding and fear-mongering, we can do better. We can all do better, together. Whether that be dragging up the lowest of us, bringing them into the light, or reining in the more enthusiastic. There's so much we can do to just make life better for all of us. This country that is an ideal that has been around for over 200 years now. We've had our ups and our downs, and take that as you will, but I'd like to think that the future is usually better. It has the chance to be better, because we make it so. And in the spirit of that, I wanted to take us back to where it all started tonight. So, I've prepared a little bit of something special tonight. Let's actually, before we get into it too far, let's turn this down just a little bit. It's a little much for me. There we go. Exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's the idea of what we're supposed to be, what we could be, what we've been before, that is worth celebrating. It's not who's in power at any given time that we're celebrating. It's not the victories or defeats or any of the sort. It's the ideal. And that's why, even in our darkest days, I still get behind trying to yeah, exactly. I still like to get into the spirit of the season, such as it is. So there we have it. So, and yeah, you're right. At the end of the night, when they turned off broadcast for the evening, and which, you know, a lot of kids are going to be thinking, absolutely, wait, what? The TV stops at night? Yes, the TV used to stop. And they would play it with the Star Spangled Banner. But, alright, so, getting off topic. We're on topic. But, anyway, as I said, we have something special tonight that I think is a good bit of perspective. And so, tonight, we will be reading together the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America by Thomas Jefferson. Right back to where it all started. So, let's go ahead and get started then, shall we? When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume, among the powers of the earth, the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government, and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly, proposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migration hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states. For cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us, in many cases, of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, superseding our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all causes whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy of the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an indistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attention to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity. We have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must, therefore, acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that, as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. So, that was the Declaration of Independence. What set us off on this long, long journey together. Let's go back to the first bit, because the opening is and always will be pretty powerful, and it's always relevant. Times change and situations change, but universal human ideas sort of carry on. So before we transition to something else, because I do have a little bit more planned for tonight, because it has only been about 15 minutes, let's go back to the opening of the Declaration of Independence, just to let it really sink in. I guess we'll start from the second paragraph, because the first is sort of the opening. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of those ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government, and to provide new guards for their future security. That is poignant. There's certain truths that are spoken there that, put to pen over 200 years ago, are still every bit as relevant today. People are more like to suffer, to just keep on and carry on, rather than throw off the shackles when they're able. That is always going to be the case. And there's a case to be made that just suffering on is the right thing to do. But there's also a time to stand up for yourself, for your neighbors that can't stand up for themselves, and have a voice. Right now, our best way to have a voice is to show up at the ballot box. You may feel like your vote doesn't matter in a lot of places. It may not matter as much in some places as it would in others. If you're in a blue bubble in a red state, you're not really going to be feeling like you can do a lot, but it is still important to get out there. And yeah, you're right. People don't really get active until it gets really bad. And by that point, sometimes it can be too late. The whole frog in a boiling pot of water. If it's a slow boil, it can be too late by the time it feels that it's hot. So it's sort of a catch-22 there. Because yeah, you can continue to just ride things out and hope things will get better. But it may just be that you're not the target of what's making things insufferable. You may be getting some by-blow and some secondary heat, but the ones really under the burner are suffering all the more, and they're too small to buck the trend. That's why it's always important to keep an eye out on your friends and neighbors. They don't even need to be friends. If you identify injustices, you can speak up. It's important to be an ally to everyone. It's gone on for years and years. It doesn't matter what country you're in, what point of history you're in. There's always in-groups and out-groups, and all are deserving of protection and rights and all that. It's human rights. It is what it is. Yep, exactly. And as long as the food keeps rolling in, bread and circuses keep going, then it'll carry on. All right. Well, let's try and keep an upward momentum, or an idea there. So I've got something else planned for tonight. We've got a couple other continued readings of importance. I won't suffer you to go through all of it, but I've got the Constitution here, which is also quite timely. So we'll read the preamble here, and I figure after that we'll transition and read some of the Bill of Rights and some of that. But we're not going to go through the entire Constitution. We're not here to put on a civics course. Just some important documents and some reminders to ourselves of what we were founded on. The principles and ideals that make up what we want to be. What we've always wanted to be. So, let's transition now to the preamble of the Constitution of the United States, penned in 1787. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. I don't know about you, but I had to memorize the preamble in grade school. We all stood up before class one at a time and rattled it off. It felt a lot longer than those quick 3 lines. That is for sure. But yeah, do kids still do that? Do they make you remember these anymore? Hell, I'd be surprised if they even read it anymore. That's kind of sad, honestly. Alright, let's skim through. So we are going past the articles, past the signatures. Oh, do they not have the amendments? Well, I'll be damned. Alright, the Declaration actually had the Bill of Rights, so let's go back to that one. I'm actually kind of flabbergasted that that is just the Constitution and none of the amendments. Yeah, we didn't do... So I was going to school right at the very end of the Cold War. USSR was falling apart when I was in grade school, so there was very little still of that sort of fervor going on. But we did have a few of those coming up, and it wasn't so much as trying to instill sort of an identity, but it was just sort of what you did. We just assumed that was what was normal. The Pledge of Allegiance and all that every morning, and all the assorted pageantry. All right, let's go ahead and I pulled up the Bill of Rights, which, as you may remember, were the original 10 amendments that were written alongside the Constitution. They were part and parcel all together. So right from the founding, these were enshrined as what was seen to be important enough to be rights enumerated right from the beginning. So these are, as all of the Constitution and all of the defined rights and amendments are all important, but these 10 in particular are worth periodic review. The First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. This is one that people will very often misattribute. Being told to shut up, you're an asshole, by a private person is not a violation of First Amendment rights. Being banned off a platform is not a violation of First Amendment rights. The government telling you to shut up, that's the line. So if you're someone, I'm sure I'm screeching to the crowd here, but if you've been silenced or canceled for spewing hate and vitriol out there, chances are they were in the right to shut you up and silence you. And remember to yourself, you don't have to put up with that. You don't have to listen to that sort of hate speech, because it's not protected speech. And yeah, I think based on our timings, I'm a couple years younger than you are, but we're all old at heart. We've experienced our years in an out of proportion timetable, it seems sometimes. All right, the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I'm not going to touch on this one, because there are many, many arguments from people who are much better informed than I am. So, I'm going to leave that one alone. I'd rather not lose any of myself out of this one. I don't have enough skin in the game on that one. The Third Amendment. No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner prescribed by law. This one is important to remember in context. It was one of the main things that the rebellion and the revolution really was starting off, or was kicked off by, was the unlawful quartering of troops, the burden placed upon families of regular citizens to house and hold and feed soldiers that weren't welcome, weren't wanted. So it hasn't come up a lot in the last 200 years, but it's important to make note of. The Fourth Amendment. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched, and the persons or things to be seized. This is one that is also frequently violated, and is often forgotten. The needing a warrant to search, needing probable cause, no forfeiture. You see talk pretty regularly about civil forfeiture and things of the like that are of suspect legality. And it's a clear cut and dry of ethics where it's absolutely unethical, but yeah. The Fifth Amendment. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime, unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces, or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. There's a lot packed into the Fifth Amendment. That covers the no double jeopardy. That covers self-testimony. That covers requiring an indictment. It introduces the court martials and invalid seizure. So there's a lot going on in the Fifth, and that is one that is important to remember, whether you anticipate having run-ins with the law or just, regular parlance. Know your rights. The Sixth Amendment. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory processes for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. The seventh, in suits at common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20. $20, oh boy. The right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. The Eighth Amendment. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. This is another of those that sort of does a lot of carrying. The excessive bail is often argued about and decided upon, and it will very frequently end up being brought up on appeal based on one judge's feelings versus another's. Same with fines. And then cruel and unusual punishment is conveniently overlooked in certain places. Gitmo. The Ninth Amendment. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. This is an important one that was meant to be sort of a catch-all that said, if it's not mentioned here, you may and very well likely do still have a right. That's one of the reasons that why our Constitution is held firm for so long. Another reason is that it's remarkably difficult to change. So it's not an easy process, that is for certain. And the 10th Amendment, the last of the Bill of Rights. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. This is one where it continually will evolve over time. The powers of the states and the separation of the federal and the state powers. There's continual arguments over whether certain rights are held by the states or others are by the federal, or whether they're rights that are uniquely held by the individual. And so you'll continually hear arguments about this on every side of the spectrum. So it's good to be informed. Good to have an idea of what's going on, what's important, what has been important through the ages. Well, honestly, that's about what I had planned for the night. It went much faster than I expected. So, let's just kind of sit and chat and hang out for a little bit. Because it feels a shame to hit and run in a quick half-hour stream, even if it's other things going on. I do have some brats I need to get back to. But, no, that's fine. So yeah, we just loop back. Despite everything that's going on, whether you are being impacted by certain groups at the moment, or you know people that are, or maybe you're completely unknown to people that are suffering, it is important to recognize that despite what anyone would have you believe, it's fine to be proud of your country, to remember the ideals that we were founded on, that we may have gone astray, and it may have been, it may be that we're living in unprecedented times. That's... if only we could live in boring times, right? But even with everything going on, today and days like this are about the ideals, the idea of what we can be, what we should be, what we want to be, and what we've always wanted to be. The pursuit of happiness is tantamount. The safety and security of the people is tantamount. All people. Doesn't matter if you've been here for generations or if you're newly found on our shores. It doesn't matter if you're of a particular color or persuasion. It doesn't matter who you love, whether they have corresponding or matching parts. All people are welcome. All people have every right that is enshrined in the documents we've gone over, and more. Men's rights, women's rights, black rights, trans rights, they're all human rights. Everyone is equal under the law. Yes, knowing that things are supposed to be different, knowing that things are that they can and should be better is important. If you don't notice that there is a flaw to be fixed, you can't fix it. So yes, it's fine to be disappointed. It's fine to be let down and disillusioned. But that can't be everything. Use that. Build that up into a fire in your heart to push for the change you want to see. And at the end of the day, vote. Vote in every election. Your primaries, your midterms, the primaries for the midterms, your local elections, your general elections. Vote, vote, vote. Go, if they make it harder to vote, do everything you can to follow their arbitrary rules and regulations. Encourage your family and friends to get out and vote. Because if you look at it, we are very much under the tyranny of the minority. There's such a minuscule turnout for voting. Vote down ballot. You are damn right. Every election on the ballot matters, not just the very top one. Even if you're just going party line vote, that's better than not voting. I'd prefer you identify each one, but I'll be honest, it's been a very long time since I've even considered voting for someone on a certain side. But it's still important to look, find and decide and have your voice be heard. So yes, every election, vote. Every election. If it's annoying, if it's obnoxious, if they make it difficult, that just means they don't want your voice to be heard, which means it's all the more important that you speak up. Alright, that's my time on the soapbox. I've done my time in the ballot box. I'd rather not go to the ammunition box. So, let's just leave that there, shall we? But that's my spiel. I am remarkably privileged. I'm not actively oppressed, but I can use my voice to try and speak up for people who are being ignored. That's the best I can do. That's the best that many of us can do. So, recognize in yourself your own situation. Recognize in your neighbor their situation. And if you can help, go for it. Even if that help is only giving a supportive word, sometimes that's all that you can do. I appreciate that. I'm having a hard time remaining apolitical myself, but I am trying very hard to keep this as an open space. I think my own inclinations and leanings are pretty apparent, but I'd prefer them not to be on the table, if you know what I mean. We can absolutely have chats that are a little bit more frank and open in alternate platforms and alternate venues. I am always open to chatting, so that's an option. Alright guys, I think that is about a good point for tonight. This was meant to be a short one. We got through what we wanted to get through, and it's just now, at least over here, starting to get a little bit on toward dark, and I'm sure there will be some displays going on. So, I'd like to catch some fireworks tonight. How about you? So, let's go ahead and call it early tonight. Thank you very much for joining us for tonight's special presentation of the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and the preamble to our Constitution. Let us all remember the ideals and ideas that our country was founded on, not the direction that we're going in any given year, any given generation, but the overarching span of our history. And we can continue to work together to make this country worth remembering, worth protecting, and of value to all of our people. Citizens, visitors, the strong and the weak among us. All right. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. Tomorrow we will resume our reading of the Picture of Dorian Gray. We've got about 2 nights left for that, so we should be able to finish this weekend, and then we'll find out what we'll read after that. I'll look for opportunities for other sorts of special readings like this. I had fun with it. It was a nice little change of pace. As we get on to other holidays, or if there are things that people want to read or want to make known, have some visibility, feel free to bring it up. I'm always open to trying new things or to bring attention to important topics. Alright guys, thank you very much for joining us on this special evening. Go have some fun. Don't lose any fingers. That's the goal anyway, right? Good night, everyone. Thank you very much.